I'm actually an instructor in history. I teach at the college level, and I have a lot of my coverage. My main area is World War I and World War II. And I really hate it when I'm teaching those classes and then we have a political discussion and students immediately go to the fascistic kind of like Hitler comparison. But that's my question that I have for you. At what point, if you see the development of what's happening currently right now to Trump's rise to power, his progression to getting his second term, compared to Weimar Germany during the in-war period, because there's a lot of correlations there, and this isn't propaganda. I can give you list after list after list from an objective point of view, because I'm sure you consider yourself to be an historian. Like I've seen you in videos before doing very well interacting with the literature, and if that's the case in history, if you're asking a question, testing a theory, or filling in a gap, asking that question shouldn't be as controversial as it should be, especially if you're looking from objective means.
Okay, fair question. Do you also, and I will answer the question, but do you also correlate President Trump's rise to second power to Winston Churchill's?
No, I wouldn't.
But they have way more in common than the Weimar Germany one. And you're a historian professor, you know that, right?
Oh.
Well, think about it. Donald Trump was put in exile, so was Churchill after the Darnells. You know about the Darnells because you're a professor, right? You do? Okay. Can you tell me about the Darnells?
I would rather focus primarily on...
If you're a World War I professor and you don't know about the Darnells? Okay. Anyway, no, but this is important because everyone says... This is what you're paying for, everybody. Because it's interesting. They say, well, the similarities between Weimar Germany and Trump, okay, but Churchill and Trump had a lot of similarities in their rise to power. So did Thatcher and Trump. The point being is there's a lot of European examples you can point to. However, I will concretely answer the question. Okay. They have huge things that they disagree on and that there were big differences. Was Hitler pro-free speech or anti-free speech?
He wasn't necessarily pro-free speech, especially when he got towards the end of the Weimar Republic.
Yeah, I mean, he would imprison journalists and put his political opponents in jail. And so I guess the question is, has Donald Trump been pro-free speech or anti-free speech?
If I can give you some comparisons that I would necessarily see. I mean, if you look at... you have a populist movement, right? You have someone who is has a cult of personality, a very effective rhetoric. If you look at the assassination attempts that were on Hitler and on Trump, if you look at even the iconography that you have within the MAGA hats, you have a white lettering on a red background. If you even go even further...
Oh, I got another one you forgot. Yeah. Did you know that Hitler had a dog?
Okay. No. So the very nature of history is seeing a level of comparison of analysis. Once again, I'm not...
Oh my goodness, Hitler was also a vegetarian, so vegetarians are also likely to kill their whole population.
If I could give you another example. And because after my question, I would like to ask
This is such a sloppy analysis, and you know it.
No, because I'm trying to step piece at a time to ask you, because the question isn't a definitive. You're trying to build an argument, which is the very nature of it. And to sit down and observe and ask these questions, because it tends to get to the right that there's this accusation that certain comparisons aren't allowed on the left. And so I'm asking you, like, in a high level of integrity, do you see these comparisons? Not to call Trump Hitler. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to ask is, if you're sitting down paying attention, at what point would you say maybe you're starting to exceed the level of someone who's trying to act as a liberator to getting to the point of the despot?
Well, first of all, I think the entire premise is wrong. You cannot draw a linear connection with every figure of history to the moment of time. First of all, that's just an incredibly sloppy way of looking at things, because then everything becomes Nazi Germany and everything is Hitlerian. For example, people are like, oh, Joe Biden is acting like Hitler, which, by the way, he acted far more as an autocrat than Donald Trump ever would, locking his political opponents in jail. 1 second. Instead, you have to look at every moment in time, its own context, in its own perspective. And I would say... There's a lot more depth and richness of history than just what happened during the horrors of World War II. As I mentioned, Churchill's rise to power, Thatcher's rise to power, the Elizabethan period.